For 5 agonizing days, the official theory was an abduction. 16-year-old Brenna walks out of school and simply vanishes from the face of the earth. Her family prepares for the worst, their hope dwindling with every passing hour. But when investigators get a warrant for her school locker, they don't find a ransom note. They find a false bottom, and beneath it, a mud-caked boot and a hand-drawn map leading deep into the unforgiving wilderness of the Cascades. It's a chilling discovery that turns a straightforward case into a deep and perplexing mystery. If you've ever felt the sting of regret over words left unsaid, you'll want to hear what happens next. Jace stared at the ceiling of his bedroom, the same cracked plaster he'd stared at for 100 sleepless hours. It was 3 a.m., and the house was silent, but his mind was screaming. The silence was the worst part. It was a heavy, suffocating blanket, where his sister's laughter and arguments and terrible music used to be. 5 days. 5 days since Brenna had walked out of Northwood High and into thin air. Each tick of the clock was a fresh twist of the knife in his gut, replaying their last conversation. It had been a stupid fight, a shouting match over her borrowing his truck without asking. He'd said things he didn't mean, angry words about her being irresponsible and childish. Her final words to him as she slammed the front door were, "You'll see, I can take care of myself." Now, those words echoed in the silence, a haunting prophecy. He'd spent every day since plastering her smiling face on telephone poles and handing out flyers at the mall, his own face a grim mask. He saw the pity in people's eyes, the hushed whispers of abduction and foul play. The police had been kind but clinical. They interviewed him and his parents, asked about boyfriends, enemies, any strange behavior. But Brenna was a good kid, a little stubborn, a bit of a dreamer, but not the type to get into serious trouble. She spent more time reading books about the wilderness and listening to their grandpa's old stories than she did at parties. Their grandpa had been a force of nature, a retired Forest Service ranger who saw the mountains as the ultimate teacher. He'd taught both Jace and Brenna how to read a compass, how to build a shelter, how to find north using the sun. For Jace, it was a fun hobby. For Brenna, it was a Bible. She soaked it all in, filling notebooks with his wisdom long after he passed away. Jace's phone buzzed on the nightstand, making him jump. It was a text from his mom. "Police are at the house. They found something." He threw on a hoodie and ran downstairs. 2 detectives, a man and a woman he recognized from the initial report, stood in their living room. His parents looked pale and exhausted. Detective Miles, the senior officer, held a large evidence bag. "We executed a warrant on Brenna's school locker this afternoon," he said, his voice gentle. "We didn't find what we expected." He placed the bag on the coffee table. Inside, Jace could see a single hiking boot, caked in reddish-brown mud, and a folded piece of yellowed paper. "The janitor was about to clean out the locker for the summer," Detective Chen added. "He said the shelf felt loose. When he lifted it, he found a hidden compartment underneath." His mom let out a small, choked sob. Jace's heart hammered against his ribs. A hidden compartment? It sounded like something out of a spy movie, not something his 16-year-old sister would do. Detective Miles carefully removed the yellow paper from the bag and unfolded it. It was a map, hand-drawn with a black marker. It depicted a section of Mount Baker National Forest, an area about 2 hours east of their town. But it wasn't a standard trail map. This one was covered in strange symbols, a drawing of a hollow log, an X next to a waterfall, a circle around a distinctively shaped rock formation. Jace leaned closer, his breath catching in his throat. He knew this map. He knew the handwriting, the symbols, the style. He had taught it to her himself. That's an orienteering map, Jace said, his voice barely a whisper. The symbols are waypoints. Grandpa taught us how to make them. He looked at the detectives, a wild, unbelievable idea taking root in his mind. She wasn't taken. She ran away. She's out there in the woods. Detective Miles looked skeptical. Son, that's a huge leap. This area is rugged. No one would go out there alone on purpose, especially a teenage girl. You don't know Brenna, Jace insisted, his voice growing stronger. He pointed to the boot in the bag. That's not even her size. It's a men's size 10. And that mud, it's from the clay deposits near Hemlock Creek on the north side of the park. The detectives exchanged a look. How could you possibly know that? Chen asked. Because Grandpa took us there a dozen times, Jace said, the pieces clicking into place with sickening clarity. He called it his secret classroom. He made us practice building caches, hiding supplies for an emergency. That boot, it's a marker. It's part of the plan. She's testing herself. She's proving she can take care of herself. The guilt hit him then, a physical blow that almost buckled his knees. This was his fault. Their fight was the trigger. Her defiant last words weren't just teenage anger. They were a promise. We need to go now, Jace said, grabbing his keys. She's been out there for 5 days. She probably planned for 3, maybe 4. She could be in trouble. Detective Miles held up a hand. Hold on. We can't just launch a search party based on a theory. We need more. What more do you need? Jace shot back, his frustration boiling over. The map is the plan. We just have to follow it. He looked at his parents, their faces a mixture of fear and confusion. He had to make them understand. He explained the caches, how their grandpa had taught them to hide small, waterproof containers with essentials, a fire starter, some dried food, a water filter. Each cache would have a clue leading to the next. The map in the locker was just the first step. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of arguing, Detective Miles relented, a flicker of understanding in his eyes. Okay, he said. We'll assemble a small team, but you're coming with us. If this is some kind of game she's playing, you're the only one who knows the rules. The drive to the trailhead felt like the longest 2 hours of Jace's life. He sat in the back of the detective's SUV, the map spread on his lap, his own copy of the park's topographical map beside it. Every landmark, every creek, every trail was a memory of summers spent with Brenna and their grandfather. As they got closer, the concrete landscape of the suburbs gave way to the towering pines and misty peaks of the Cascades. They arrived at the deserted parking lot for the Boulder Creek Trail, just as the sun was beginning to rise, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. A search and rescue volunteer, a grizzled man named Al, was waiting for them with a German shepherd at his side. Jace pointed to the first symbol on Brenna's map, the hollow log. It should be about a half-mile up this trail, off to the west, he said, his voice tight with nerves. They set off, the dog leading the way, the air crisp and cold. Jace's mind was a whirlwind of hope and fear. He prayed he was right about all this, that they would find her cold and hungry but safe in a tent. He couldn't bear the alternative. After 20 minutes of hiking, Jace spotted it. Just off the trail, hidden by ferns, was a massive fallen cedar, its core hollowed out by time. "This is it," he said, his heart pounding. He crawled inside, the smell of damp earth filling his nostrils. At the very back, tucked into a crevice, was a small, green, waterproof box. He pulled it out, his hands shaking as he unlatched the lid. Inside, just as he predicted, were a few high-protein bars, a box of waterproof matches, and another folded piece of paper. He opened it. It wasn't a map this time, but a riddle, written in Brenna's familiar scrawl. "Where the silver water falls and speaks its name, look behind the stone that feels no flame." Jace read it aloud. Detective Chen frowned. "What does that even mean?" Al, the SAR volunteer, stroked his beard. "Silver Falls is about 3 miles north of here, and a stone that feels no flame, a wet stone, behind the waterfall." A chill ran down Jace's spine. It was a place their grandpa had shown them, a small alcove hidden behind the cascade of water. It was dangerous to get to, the rocks slippery and treacherous. Brenna was smart, but she was also impulsive. "We need to hurry," Jace said, a new urgency in his voice. The hike to Silver Falls was harder, the trail steeper and more rugged. With every step, Jace's anxiety grew. He imagined Brenna navigating this terrain alone, maybe in the dark. Did she pack enough warm clothes? Did she remember how to purify water if her filter broke? The sound of the waterfall grew from a distant murmur to a deafening roar. They finally broke through the trees and stood before it, a powerful curtain of water crashing into a rocky pool below. Jace pointed to a narrow moss-covered ledge that ran along the cliff face, disappearing behind the falls. "The alcove is back there," he yelled over the noise. Al clipped a safety line to himself and Jace. "Stay right behind me. One slip here and it's a long way down." They inched their way along the ledge, the spray from the falls soaking them instantly. The rocks were slick with moss, and Jace focused on his footing, not daring to look down. Behind the waterfall, the roar was deafening, but they found the small cave-like opening. Tucked inside was another green box. Jace's fingers were numb with cold as he opened it. This time it held a small first aid kit, a compass, and another note. This one was different. The handwriting was shaky, and there was a dark, reddish-brown smear on the paper. "Climbed too high to see the sun. Slipped where the old man's watch is run. Leg is fire, sky is gray. Need you now. Come find the way." Jace's blood ran cold. The old man's watch. It was their grandpa's nickname for a sundial he'd built out of stones on top of Eagle Ridge, a treacherous, off-trail peak with a stunning view. Leg is fire. She was hurt. Badly, he showed the note to the others. The playful tone of the adventure was gone, replaced by desperation. Al got on his radio immediately, calling for a possible medevac and giving their coordinates. "Eagle Ridge is no joke," Al said grimly. "It's mostly scree and loose rock. If she's injured up there, she's in a bad way." Fear, cold and sharp, seized Jace. This wasn't a game anymore. Brenna was alone, injured and exposed on a mountain. Her 3-day adventure had turned into a 5-day nightmare. He looked at the compass from the box, then at the towering, unforgiving peak of Eagle Ridge visible through the trees. "I know the fastest way up," he said, his voice steely with determination. "Let's go." He had to get to her. He had to make up for that stupid fight. For every moment he'd taken his stubborn, brave, foolish little sister for granted. The climb up Eagle Ridge was a brutal, lung-burning ascent. They left the marked trails behind, bushwhacking through dense undergrowth and scrambling over fields of loose rock that shifted under their feet. Jace pushed himself harder than he ever had, driven by the image of Brenna's shaky handwriting. Every snapped twig sounded like a breaking bone. Every shadow held a new terror. He was no longer just a guide. He was a rescuer, and time was running out. Al, the veteran SAR volunteer, kept a steady pace behind him, his calm presence a small comfort. Detective Miles and Chen struggled to keep up, their city shoes no match for the unforgiving terrain. As they gained elevation, the forest thinned, and the wind picked up, whipping at their clothes. Jace scanned the ridge above them, searching for any sign of her. A piece of clothing, a flash of color, anything. He found their grandfather's crude sundial at the summit, a circle of stones marking the hours. It was a place they had loved, a place that felt like it was on top of the world. But there was no sign of Brenna. Panic began to claw at Jace's throat. What if they were too late? What if she had tried to move and fallen? Al's dog began to bark, a sharp, insistent sound, pulling at its leash and trying to lead them not toward the peak, but down a steep, wooded slope on the far side. "He's got something," Al said, his voice tense. They followed the dog, half sliding down the embankment, grabbing onto tree trunks for support. And then Jace saw it. A makeshift lean-to, built against the base of a rock outcropping, its frame made of fallen branches, its walls woven with pine boughs. It was exactly how their grandpa had taught them to build an emergency shelter. He scrambled the last few feet and ripped away the boughs covering the entrance. Brenna was lying inside, pale and shivering, her leg bent at an unnatural angle and crudely splinted with sticks and strips of her own flannel shirt. Her eyes fluttered open as Jace knelt beside her. "Jace," she whispered, her voice raspy. "You found me. I knew you'd read the map." Relief washed over him so powerfully his legs almost gave out. He gently took her hand. It was icy cold. "I'm here, Bren. It's okay. We're going to get you out of here." She tried to sit up, wincing in pain. "I'm so stupid," she cried, tears welling in her eyes. "I was trying to climb down from the ridge after I left the note, and the rocks just gave way. I heard my leg snap." She had been lying there for nearly 2 days, alone and in agony. She had run out of food yesterday, and her water was almost gone. The nights had been freezing, and her small fire had been difficult to maintain. Detective Miles and Chen arrived, breathing heavily, their faces etched with relief. Al was already on the radio, confirming the location and requesting immediate airlift. As they waited, Jace sat with Brenna, holding her hand and wrapping his own jacket around her shivering shoulders. "Why, Bren?" he asked softly. "Why did you do this?" She wouldn't meet his eyes. I had to get away," she said, her voice choked with tears. "The fight with you, the bad grade on my physics test. I felt like such a failure. I wanted to prove to you, to everyone, that I wasn't just a kid, that I was strong, like Grandpa." "You are strong," Jace said, his own voice thick with emotion. "You're the strongest person I know. You survived out here for 5 days with a broken leg, but you don't have to prove anything. Not to me." The thumping sound of a helicopter grew louder, and soon the chopper was hovering overhead, the wind from its rotors tearing at the trees. A medic was lowered on a winch, and they carefully loaded Brenna into a rescue basket. Jace watched as she was lifted into the sky, a tiny, fragile figure against the vast wilderness. He and the others made the long hike back down the mountain in silence. By the time they reached the trailhead, it was getting dark. The parking lot was now filled with news vans and police cars. Jace was exhausted, his body aching, but his mind was clear for the first time in days. At the hospital, his parents were waiting, their anxious faces breaking into tears of relief when the doctor told them Brenna would be okay. She had a clean break in her tibia, severe dehydration, and mild hypothermia, but she was going to make a full recovery. Jace went into her room. She was hooked up to an IV, her leg in a heavy cast, but the color was returning to her cheeks. "Hey," he said, pulling up a chair next to her bed. "Hey," she whispered back. They sat in silence for a long moment. "I'm sorry, Jace," she finally said, "for everything, for worrying you." "I'm sorry too," he replied, "for being a jerk. I never should have said those things." They talked for a long time, not as a big brother and an annoying little sister, but as two people who had almost lost each other. They talked about the pressure of school, about missing their grandpa, about the stupid, small things that had built up into a wall between them. A few days later, Brenna came home. Her misadventure in the wilderness was the talk of the town, but the family closed ranks, protecting her from the media circus. Life slowly started to return to a new kind of normal. The silence in the house was gone, replaced by the clunking of Brenna's crutches and the sound of them laughing together over bad TV shows. The fight was forgotten, but not the lesson it had taught them. Jace knew he would never again let a stupid argument get in the way of telling his sister what she meant to him. And Brenna, having faced the raw, unforgiving power of nature, had learned that true strength wasn't about surviving alone, but about knowing when to ask for help. Brenna's story is a powerful reminder that sometimes the people we think we know best are fighting battles we can't see. It makes you wonder, if you found yourself in a moment of crisis, would you be more likely to push people away to prove your own strength? Or would you have the courage to reach out for help? We love bringing these kinds of compelling stories to you, and hearing your thoughts makes it all worthwhile. If this story resonated with you, consider subscribing and hitting the bell so you don't miss what's coming next.